Well, hello again. This time we're also going to start with the proportioning valve. I've taken it down to my neighbor's house and he let me use his vise and we were able to get this thing. He put most of the muscle in it. Man, that thing was really frozen on there with rust. Anyway, we've got it, and what we're going to do is we're going to open this baby up and we're going to see what's inside. Now, before we loosened up the nut, I counted how many threads it would be until we reached the, how many threads were exposed up to the bottom part of this flat spot. And it was 3 threads. So that's what we're going to set it to when we're done, if we can rebuild it. If not, I'm going to throw it away and not worry about it. Part 1 is off. This part here takes a 7/8 of an inch wrench. Alright, the spring apparently just comes right out. Yes, it does. Kind of rusty and messy. A lot of that's probably rust from soaking in the, loosened up rust from soaking in the vinegar. Well, it just goes down in there. Nothing else in there. Just bottoms out, that's all. Alright, so that's number 2. We'll go ahead and get these babies in order in which we took them out. I'm going to need a pair of snap ring pliers to get that ring off of there. And this one here has the bolt holding it in. That little bolt down there takes a 5/16. I went ahead and broke it loose with a nut driver. It came right loose. Wasn't any big deal. We're at the point where now the fun begins. As you can see, I have this little pair of snap ring pliers that would have been perfect for taking that snap ring right out of there, but unfortunately, when I stuck the little pin in there, this one side of this hole is rusted out. It's not even there, so the snap ring pliers are no good. You know, if I stick that in there and stick that in there, as you can see, it's not going to do anything. It won't even grab. There's nothing to grab. So we'll just take a knife and maybe my ball peen hammer. I don't know. We'll get that thing out of there. We're not going to give up on it. We are all powerful. Well, here's plan A. Just take a pair of needle nose and stick underneath that lip right there and then just pull in this direction, and hopefully it'll just peel it right out of the slot. If that doesn't work, we'll try plan B. Well, it is simply not cooperating. As you can see now, both of these ears have rusted through. Nothing to really grab onto, so I grabbed a hold of it with the needle nose and pulled a little bit, and it just popped right off. It's just rusted completely through. But I did create enough space. I tapped on here. I created a little bit of space all the way around, and this here I can actually get away from the slot to about right here. But I think what I better do before I break off this one also, this is where patience comes in, people. I'm going to go ahead and fill this thing. I'm going to get rid of this, of course. I'm going to fill this thing with some WD-40. Not WD-40, but penetrating oil. Put maybe some of that PB blaster stuff that I get at Lowe's. I'm going to just put it on in there and let her soak. Maybe that'll loosen it up enough so I can get it out. It probably won't be till tomorrow, though. Well, here's our old PB blaster penetrating oil. It works real good for me. A lot of other people say it works good for them, too. Just going to soak it right in there. It may run all the way down through the cracks and everything right back into the barrel of the proportioning valve, but that's okay. I just want it to soak away. Squirt a little bit more down there. I want plenty in there. Alright, we'll just let her sit for a while. I took the little one of the wire brushes I had, and I wire brushed all the loose rust off the outside of the spring. I can't get down in the center. So I'm going to go ahead and let that soak in the vinegar for maybe a couple of days. That's all. I don't know. It doesn't need it that much. And down in here, I cleaned it out the best I can, but it's still a little bit mangy. I would like to get it clean. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some water displacement experiment number 40. That's what we're going to do if I can bend it in the right shape. Water displacement experiment number 40. And we'll go ahead and squirt that down in there. WD-40 is a great cleaner, in case you don't know. Spray that down there, and then I'm just going to go ahead and scrub it around with the Q-tip until I get it nice and clean. Well, it didn't take as long as I thought. After about 30 minutes of soaking, I was able to get the the needle nose underneath the edge of it like that. And of course I removed as much rust as I could with the tip of a jeweler's screwdriver around the edge, all the way around on the inside, up along the top edge. Got as much as I could off. And then after it had soaked just a little while longer, I was able to get underneath it with a good pair of needle nose and grip tight, and this time it pulled right out without the end breaking off. And now I've got my little nut driver here down on that nut down in there. Get a little clarity here for you. And then I put this down like that, and I tapped it with a hammer, and it's coming right out the bottom down here. See how she's nice and flush now? Alright, just a quick little tap, hardly even any tap at all. It's almost a nothing. We'll go ahead and lift this right on out. And there we go. She is empty. And we're going to leave this right where it's at until tomorrow, because the wife just called me for supper and she said, get your buns in here. The dogs need to be fed too. So we'll see. You'll pick this up tomorrow. It'll be, 8 or 12 hours for me, a split second for you. A little update on the kickdown rod that connects to the linkage on the back of the carburetor down there and runs down to the transmission. It's all been de-rusted and painted, and it is ready to put a little lubrication on it. And this end here is in good shape. Everything looks good. We'll be putting that on later. There's actually a procedure in what I have to do with this rod. You just don't slap it on there, and put your clip on the end. I got brand new clips for it, by the way, those E-clips. So we'll go over that later, but right now the primary thing is what's in this box. I just received this from FedEx, and it's a long box. What's inside the box is a replacement for these 3/8" brake lines that I bought last time and tried to bend with that bending tool in the last video. And you'll recall when I tried to bend them, they kinked. And I tried it twice, and they kinked twice using a bending tool. Well, some folks, they said, well, John, all you had to do is put sand in here, fill it up with sand. I knew that. That trick goes back to when I was in the crib, okay? Old stuff. Some of y'all think that's brand new. It's not. It goes way, way back. Someone else said, well, you could always heat it while you make your bend. No, we're not going to do that either. Come on, what is this, 2019? We do a much better Plan B. So let's open it up and find out what Plan B is. Well, here it is. 60 beautiful inches of brake line that looks exactly like the brake line we couldn't bend without putting a kink in it. So what's the big deal? I'm going to tell you what the big deal is. Y'all pay attention to this if you own a Thunderbird in particular. Those of you who have other cars, yes, pay attention to it also. But your T-Bird owners will probably find this very useful for what I'm going to use it. Now it does come with fittings on the end. We're going to be removing those because I'll be sticking this end into a hose on the gas line underneath the fender, and of course the other end goes into the hose, so I'll have to cut off the flare. And this one here, I'm thinking about using it for the that windshield wiper motor line that I replaced with that 400 psi line. I replaced them all with 400 psi, but I may want to decide to go with a hard brake line type of thing. Now these are capable of withstanding a lot of pressure, and we're only going to be using it for gas lines. So, the first one. So I don't need a hole to worry about, is it going to be able to withstand the pressure? So, okay, John, enough chit-chat. What is the difference between these two and this one? They look the same. They smell the same. This, ladies and gentlemen, is called Armour. Armour. I've known about it for years. I always thought they were more expensive than they are. These lines, each of them, are only $7.94 a piece, and I had to order them online. I ordered them through Amazon, which I generally don't order through Amazon. I'm not too crazy about Brother Bezos's liberal slant on things. However, there are times when I have to do it. And this line here, the one we tried to bend the other day, use sand, heat, whatever, you probably would get a good bend. This line here is a copper nickel alloy, and you can bend it by hand. and it won't kink. You can get it in large coils or rolls in copper color even, or just this color right here. And you can run a brake line from the front of the car all the way to the rear. Do it by hand, bend it over and around in all kinds of ways and everything without using a bender. It's fantastic stuff. Poly Armour. You'll see when we get ready to do the gas line. I shined up the spring real good after I got it out of the vinegar. It looks real good today. I'm only going to soak it overnight, like I said. Now there's a little bit of rust down in there that I can't really get to, but anywhere near what it was, no. It looks nice. So we'll go ahead and take that. And I've also cleaned out the inside of this. Nice and shiny, looking good. These two can go together. So far, so good. Now, I could jump right into it. This here is the early version of the plunger, or the piston. It's got the bolt in it. This is the early version, and so we need to tear it apart. I'm going to have to order a kit, but I'm not sure this is going to be cost effective. The kit, the only place I can find the kit for rebuilding this is on Max Thunderbird. They want $15 for it, which is a very reasonable cost. But then again, you got to deal with that stupid $10 shipping cost. You know, it's got 4 little rubber pieces, and no, 5 little rubber pieces in that kit. That's it. These little rubber things you see here, these little seals. And they want $10 to ship that. I mean, it's just so asinine for them to do that. I don't understand their reasoning, because they've certainly lost a lot of money on my purchases already by keeping that $10 deal going. But anyway, it doesn't matter right now. Now I could fiddle part around, you know, de-rusting this thing here and, you know, scraping out some of the rust around that bolt head. It's quite a bit. I could get it loose, but there's no sense in going through any of this until I find out whether or not the inside of the proportioning valve case, if it's shiny and clean and doesn't, if it's all pitted and messed up, we can stop right here, and then we'll just go ahead and order a new proportioning valve through Summit Racing, I believe it is. Yeah, Summit Racing. I think it's called a Stillwell or Sitwell or something like that. Proportioning valve. We'll get one of those. Brendan recommends that I not get the adjustable proportioning valve. They are good for racing cars and things like that, where you can adjust the brakes back and forth the way you want them. But they have others there that we can buy that are one piece. Now, before we go any further, let me bore you with a little explanation of what does this proportioning valve do. There's young folks out there, or those just starting out, or like me. I had never even heard or seen a proportioning valve my whole life. Never really worried about it. It was probably in the car and never even noticed. When you have front disc brakes on the front of a car and drum brakes on the rear, you want the disc brakes to grab first. Now, this is a car that weighs over 2 tons, so you want the car to brake first like this, you know. And so what happens is the brake fluid comes directly from the master cylinder straight into the calipers on the front disc brakes. There's 2 pistons on each side of the car. Actually, there's 4 pistons, because they're all independently operated. So you've got 4 pistons on each side of the car, stopping this almost 2.5 ton car, 2.25 ton car, when it's going along at 60, 70 miles an hour. So you want those front brakes to grab first, so the fluid comes directly there. Now to the rear brakes, where the drum brakes are, they have to go through this proportioning valve to get there. Now this spring, the tension in this spring, by screwing this thing in, you collapse that spring more and more. Once the pressure, now keep in mind, you hit the brake with your foot, instant pressure goes to the front disc brakes, pressure to the back lines goes through this, and depending on the tension setting of this spring, once it collapses enough, with the hydraulic pressure coming from the brake fluid pressure, once that spring collapses enough, it allows the fluid to go through here into your back brakes. That prevents all 4 brakes from grabbing at the same time. If you do that, the rear brakes will lock up on you, and then you go into a fishtail, all kind of weird stuff happens. So the front brakes have to grab first, then, now all of this happens within a matter of seconds, and 1 or 2 seconds, and we're not talking about something that takes place over, a minute and a half. But when you slam on your brakes, or when you hit your brakes at a high speed, front brakes grab, the spring gets compressed here from the brake fluid pressure coming down the line, and going into, where does it even go in? It goes into here. It goes in right here from the master cylinder on the right. The pressure will come down here, collapse this spring through the use of this plunger, and then allow the fluid to run through to the rear brakes. Okay, that's the way it's done. That way you don't get, you get the front brakes first, and then the back brakes apply, and you get nice even pressure on all four wheels. Now that's a long explanation. I hope everybody understands it. I do not intend to go through it again. Let's clean out the barrel in this thing, give it a good shine up and clean up, and see what it looks like. Now the idea here is, now that I have it all cleaned out and there was, you know, quite a bit of dirt and crud and crap, the idea here is to wind up with a nice shiny barrel wherever the rubber cups, you know, slide up and down on it. By rubber cups, I'm talking about these little babies here, this little baby right here, and that's about it. These are your two primary rubber. This is a, not a cup, I think it's a rubber O-ring. And this is a rubber cup, and I think this is a rubber cup. I have to find out when I tear it apart, but you want a nice shiny surface for that, for those cups to be able to grab a hold of and slide. Let me see if I can turn this light on, see if it'll help a little bit here. Yeah. So what we have here is we have some pitting. Let me see if I can show it to you. There's some pitting right there. Okay. Looks a little rough. I've given it a little bit of sandpaper with some 800 grit papers to shine it up a little bit, see what it would look like once I got it shined up. Now there's a little bit more pitting. Now this is on the top part. Right there is probably the worst pitting of all right there. See it? Now down below we have some more. And it would be up in this area here, I believe, up where the inlet lines are. And there's some more pitting right there. See it? Little tiny holes all the way down in the second part. Right along that edge, the top of that edge. Now that's not bad, you know. I mean, I have seen, basically what we're looking at here is a wheel cylinder or a brake cylinder for, you know, drum brakes on the back of a car. They work exactly the same way. It's just a different shape, does a different job. And I've seen some that are a lot worse than that keep on working like there's no tomorrow. And a little bit of something right there. Now it can be honed out, but I'm not so sure I can hone it out enough to take care of the pitting, although I could take care of probably most of it. You know, considering how old it is, it's in very good shape. Now you can see those pits down in there pretty darn good on that second lip right there. So it's not bad. Not bad at all. Now the question is it salvageable, and do I want to, you know, take a chance on the road with it? I don't know. The ultimate decision is going to be mine. You know, Brendan might say, oh, it's fine, or any of you guys might say it's all fine. Don't worry about it. Rebuild it, put it in there. But you got to understand this. I'm the guy that's going to be driving the car, not you. So the ultimate decision will be mine. If 50,000 people say it's good, and I say it's bad, I win. Okay? That's the philosophy I have to go under, because this is a safety issue. Very, very important. You slam your brakes on, and the back brakes go on first, or don't go on when they're supposed to, and next thing you know, you're fishtailing around the road. You don't know what could happen. You hit somebody coming the other way. We don't want that. Or the car may not stop in time, and you wind up plowing into the guy ahead of you. You know, this is a very important little item right here. Whether or not I use this proportioning valve, let's go ahead and tear this apart. You know, take the bolt out if I can get it out. When I was turning the bolt later, what was happening was the entire thing was turning. See it? Inside the barrel. I thought I was loosening it up, when in fact I wasn't. I was just going round and round with it. It just broke the rubber loose from the rubber cups loose from the side of the barrel and the inside of the valve body. So I've got to still loosen this up. I'll have to knock off a lot of that rust around there. I may even wind up having to soak it overnight in that PB blaster. I don't know. Let's see what I can do. I want everybody to at least see how this thing is put together. Now how this is done, I assume, is you put a 1/2-inch wrench on that right there and hold one end with the 1/2-inch open end wrench. Then you take a 5/16 socket or another wrench, put it on the other side, and then just kind of, you know, unscrew it. And hopefully the bolt will come loose. If it doesn't, we'll just soak it overnight in the PB blaster. Like I said, no big deal. We're in no rush. Well, the bolt is out. I'll tell you what, that baby was in there really tight. The wrench slipped off this thing one time and kind of put a gouge when it slipped off. I had to sand it, you know, get the gouge out. And it left a sharp point. And I had to sand it down, make it nice and smooth. It's a lot better now. So you got to be careful. You got to make sure that wrench stays on there flush. There was no real damage done, but okay, the bolt is out. Now what? Well, I think what I have to do is I have to take this collar off next. Move it around. See, it's a. Let me see. Right here is the opening, the large opening. Okay, I need to. Once I remove that collar, this thing here should come off, which spins freely on there, as you can see. And this entire thing should slide out the back, I think, or this whole thing should slide off this way. I'm not exactly certain. Let's just get the collar off and see what happens. Well, that baby's off, and as you can see, I had to spread it. And see that notch right there? That notch really wasn't made so the thing could be spread. It was, that notch is there so you can squeeze it together around that hub right there, that slot where it fits. You know, as I said, I think earlier, maybe in the last video, I can't remember what, maybe this video, I don't remember, but this thing was not meant to be rebuilt. Ford Motor Company wanted you to just take it off and throw it away and put a new one on. They never provided any kits for it, so the idea was to never remove this. Once it went on there, no problem. Now, of course, we're spreading it apart to get it off. Now, how many times we can do that, I don't know, before it breaking. Tell you what, probably one more. So how did I get that thing spread, you know? Well, I've told you many times, try to always think the opposite in some cases. And, you know, pliers will go this way, pick things up, of course. However, they can also be used another way to spread things apart. So you go ahead and this thing here was about, it was about that far apart when I stuck these needle noses in there. Nice small pair of needle noses. But you got to be real careful. You got to keep the tip of the needle nose against the flat spot of each side of this thing. Otherwise they slip off. Anyway, just grab the handle, one with one hand, one with the other. Keep it focused on what you're doing, and you can spread this thing apart just like that and spread it enough to where it gets off. Just got to be careful it doesn't slip off. You know, make sure everything is dry, no oil, none of that stuff. All right, here we go. Now, how do I get this collar off? The thing, it won't come out. It's loose in the rear, as you can see. And it should come out of there, but that collar is keeping it from happening. This, rotatable collar. So, what do? Well, I think I have to remove this cup right here. Get a little focus here for you. I think I have to remove that cup. And I'm going to do that. And, you know, like I said, it doesn't matter if this thing gets broken, if the pitting inside the barrel is no good anyway. So, but I'm going to be real careful. I'm going to take this little screwdriver down there and remove that cup. And I'm hoping that the hole in this thing will slide over. It doesn't quite look the same size. This looks larger than that part right there. But we do have a little bit of play. See, so let's find out. Let's get the cup off. I'm just going to stick this underneath, gently peel it up, and roll it off over the top of it. As expected, that little collar will not slip up over the top of the brass top like that. So, how do we get that off? Well, I'm going to tell you. It appears that it was pressed on, and as you can see around here, there's kind of like a space around there. This collar was probably pressed on it, and then the screw pulled the two together. However, the more I look at this, the more I think that maybe it doesn't have to come apart quite so far. I can go ahead and take off this other rubber thing, give it a very good cleaning. The only problem is there is a rubber bushing down in there, a rubber gasket down inside there where this brass meets, or appears to be a rubber anyway. It looks rubber to me. So I don't know, but if I have to get it off, there's probably the only way we're going to have to do it is to put the screw back in the hole, hold the base, and then tap on the top of the screw and it might push that collar. I'd have to hold this part right here while I tap this, and it would push that collar off of there. And I guess that's the only way. We'll probably wind up boogering it up real good, but I can still get this cup off. I mean, this cup comes off with no problem at all. See? I don't know. Maybe all I have to do is just give it a good cleaning. And this thing here, see, it rolls right off, no sweat. I could take that off next. Just give it a good cleaning, a good soaking, a good spray out with contact cleaner. That may be all I need to do. And then just put brand new cups on it if we just, decide that this is good. Well, that's about it, folks. I can't get this thing apart, and I'm not about to damage it, severely in the process of doing it when all I had to do was peel the rubber things up off of it. However, even in the rear, there is a rubber gasket right here, just as I thought. And it's, it's soft enough I can peel it up over the top of this if need be. But I don't understand, why is this slot here? Is this thing supposed to fit in the slot, or is there a separate one for that? I don't know. Strangest thing. I'm going to have to check that out. But I do know that it's nice and soft and pliable, the one that's in there. That one right there. Anyway, that's it for now on this. I'm not going to waste a whole lot more time till I do some talking with some folks. And it's all cleaned up, good to go. Everything is good to go on it. I don't see a problem. The only thing now this front rubber cup was a little worn, as you can see, along the edges. The back one is pretty good shape. Not bad, but still worn out. Okay. So the question boils down to two questions. Is this good to go? And is this going to be cost effective to buy the kit and pay the shipping charges, or just go ahead and buy another one to take its place? We shall see. We will be getting back to you on that. And now we are back to our kickdown rod. We need to go ahead and get that installed. We're not going to put this in this video. I want to kind of make this video somewhat shorter. We have a couple of things we have to do. First, we have to find out what kind of transmission do we have in this car. We have an automatic, yes, but is it a C4 or a C6? Well, what does that mean? Well, there were two different kinds of transmissions in '66. I think the C6 came out in '66, if I'm not mistaken. But the C4 is the Cruise-O-Matic. The C6 is a more beefed up, essentially the same on the inside and everything, but it was designed for your heavy-duty engines like your Ford 390 FE, which is what this is right here. So we need to find out what kind of transmission came with this car. Now, the fellow I bought it from said that the engine was rebuilt and the transmission was rebuilt before I bought it from him. He had paid to have that all done. Now, my question is, well, did they change transmissions in the process, or did they leave the original in? I don't know. We have to find out. So, although the kickdown rod is just the same for both, either C4 or C6, but I want to know what kind came with the car. So, the way we find that out is we open up the old car door here. If it'll open up. Yes. Well, I'll tell you what, that interior needs lots of work done to it. I can't wait to get started on the interior. It's going to be so much easier than this, I think. Anyway, down here on your identification plate, there's one of the. Let me see if I can zoom in here. I want you to see this for those of you who have Thunderbirds or don't know. One of these names down here says trans right on the end. Can you see it? It says trans right there. Right there. If I can hold this thing still enough. Let me zoom in a little further. There you go. This one says trans, and there's a number 4 stamped over the top. That means C4. That means that this thing is supposed to be a Cruise-O-Matic. All right, that's what came with the car. So now we have to go down underneath it and actually physically take a look at the transmission. There is a difference between the C4 and the C6. I'm going to show you what that difference is before we go underneath. This is the Ford C4 transmission. You'll notice that the belt housing has these ribs on it, and it's also a two-piece affair. The belt housing is separate from the transmission body. 2 pieces, all right? And here's another shot of it from the other side. But the key thing is it's two-piece, and these ribs are you'll find on the bell housing. Now let's go down and take a look at the C6. Now the C6 is all one piece, as you can see. There's no separate bell housing. It's all one piece, just like the later model cars. All right down into the transmission itself. There's no ribs on it whatsoever. Well, now we know what we're kind of maybe possibly looking for once we get underneath the car. Let's go down and see what we got. Now the bell housing may not be exactly the same as the one you saw in the picture. I'm primarily looking for the one piece versus the two piece. Well, now this is interesting. Single bell housing all the way back through to the transmission. This is a single piece. Well, wasn't that a C6, not a C4? Looking at it from the top of the engine, you can also see that there's no ribs. Nice and smooth all the way back on the bell housing there. You know, with any kind of luck, within not too distant future, we'll have this wheel all put back together, all the brake line done, and I've said this before, but I really am driving on. I want to cover a lot of details with you all. This is not just get the Thunderbird together and back it out and all this other crap. It's so others who own Thunderbirds can get some information from it. I've been contacted by several of you already. That's really great. I'm glad to hear it. Last video I put up was a mishmash video of the wife and I having dinner out here in the garage, a steak dinner. We got a lot of good positive comments from that. I really appreciated you guys all chiming in on that one. That was a lot of fun for wifey and I, and it was a lot of fun to see that you all, enjoy seeing something like that. That was great. There were a few questions came up. One, was that Jackie Gleason music in the background? Yes, it was. It was a CD played through a small CD player. I showed you a few videos back that I had picked up at the St. Joseph Catholic Church flea market. I just set it on the fender of the car over here and just let it play the Jackie Gleason CD. And it was not played through a tube radio. It was raining and kind of a misty thing out there. Probably would have been a good idea to do that, but I didn't. And lastly, the Mogan David Blackberry wine. One of our subscribers thought it was non-alcohol. It's not. It's not non-alcohol. It is actually alcohol. Been around since, oh God, Mogan David Blackberry's been around for eons. My two favorite wines are Mogan David and Manischewitz Blackberry wine. I like them both. Even the grape is good, but I like sweet wine. For those of you who might not know this, I read in a book one time. Broom fell down. I read in a book one time that if you have a lot of acid in your body, you like non-sweet wines. If you have if you have low acid in your body, you like sweet wines. Well, I must have low acid in my body because I like sweet wines. So anyway, thanks again for chiming in on that. That was great. We'll have to, we're going to set up again, like I said, something else in the future. But right now, I've got to keep concentrating on this. We are making progress, trust me. So until next time, this is John.